Welcome to a lecture on theory. I'm calling it Mirror Window Lens, moving from self-reflection to theoretical reasoning. It's part of the Video Game Culture and Theory course at Seton University. Well, mirrors, windows, and lenses. They're metaphors for how we can approach a topic that we study. When you look at a text and you see mostly yourself, you're looking into a mirror. This is the way most students, I would say, arrive at college. They might ask questions like, did I like Pirates of the Caribbean? Did I relate to any of the characters in it? Now, when instead you start looking through the text at the world, then you're looking at the text as a window. And you might ask a question like, why are pirates so popular all of a sudden? What do pirates tell us about our own culture? Looking at Pirates of the Caribbean as a window is a more sophisticated way of responding to it. The next step is a lens. You're looking at the way you see the world. And the metaphor I'm using here is you're using the glass to study your own eyesight. Some of the questions you might ask about Pirates of the Caribbean, if you're looking at it as a lens, might be, you might make the observation that romanticized pirates manage our fears of terrorists. That's one way of looking at it. You might instead think that the Pirates of the Caribbean movies symbolize rebellion against the man, rooting for the little guys against the empire. You might also focus on the multicultural embrace of deviants and outsiders in Pirates of the Caribbean. After all, I don't want to spoil it for you, but they live in an altered state, shall we say, if you haven't seen the movie. Okay, let's take a look at mirrors. If you are playing a computer game and you're investigating it in a mindset where you're thinking of a mirror, you might ask yourself the questions such as, did I like this game? Was it fun? Was it boring? You might ask, how can I defeat the level 4 boss? You might ask, would I tell my friends to buy it? Or, what would I change about the story or the graphics or the sound or the controls? These are all perfectly legitimate, reasonable responses to a text, but they're all operating on a level in which it's basically your reaction to the text, your opinion on the text, or you're investigating, in the case of how do you defeat the boss, something factual. If you're looking at games as windows, you might ask yourself a question like, well, how well does this game simulate what it's trying to simulate? What does the game teach? Who plays the game and why? And what techniques create the game's effects? Those are all related to the way that you looked at a game as a mirror, but you're looking through the game at the outside world, looking at the game as a tool, an imperfect tool, an incomplete tool, an insightful tool, a particular way of representing the outside world, or some imaginary aspect of the world. A good fantasy realm could be perfectly, how do games treat fantasy? How do games treat heroism? Things like that. Okay. Let's take a look at SimCity. If you want to start theorizing SimCity, you recognize, well, the point of SimCity is to build and expand a city. The very premise of a game suggests that a city is better than a pristine natural environment. And these values are part of the game's code, and they're built into the rule system. So you could say SimCity makes the claim that expansion is good. After all, a game is not SimNature or SimYurt commune. Let's take a look now at The Sims. If you want to look at The Sims from an environmentalism lens, you might ask yourself a question like, what opinion does The Sims have on should human desires always trump nature? Well, what opinion does The Sims have on economic determinism? Economic determinism is a general theoretical term that argues power and money are the most important determining factors. Not necessarily saying you should have power or you should have money. Economic determinism focuses on the extent to which materialistic needs, access to power, access to money, defines human experiences. So you could ask yourself, are the Sims a satire of materialism, or are the Sims and their materialistic ways where you purchase things in order to make yourself happy? Is that satire, or is it part of a materialistic society? You could look at gender. How is sexuality represented in The Sims? How are body types represented in The Sims? Violence and childbearing and other issues that are deeply enmeshed in our cultural understanding of gender. You might also look at taboos and ethics and community building practices, ways that psychology is represented or caricatured, or our understanding of psychology is distorted through playing The Sims. These are all approaches that apply a particular theory to our understanding of a game. And these are really starting points. Now, we know that games are generally age-rated and censored, and the public is generally okay with the idea that young kids should not have access to games that are marketed and designed for older people. Same thing with movies. There's a rating system which is a compromise between permitting the freedom of speech and showing material that culture at large feels is inappropriate for kids. Now, it's actually fairly rare for a society in Western free society anyway to agree universally that books should be marketed with age-appropriate labels, age restrictions, and so forth. In general, the public would consider that kind of thing as overly politically correct or overly worried about exposing kids to things that aren't appropriate. The idea is that parents and families should make those decisions themselves. That's generally the overview. So when a librarian or a teacher wants to influence the way the book publishing industry works, instead of threatening to slap a rating on a book, they'll do it by awarding prizes to good books. And the Caldecott Award, for instance, is one that parents often look for. And but just try putting smoking in a kid's book and seeing what that does to word-of-mouth recommendations, to educators' recommendations. Is it going to be on a reading list for a school board, which could end up, selling thousands of copies of it and making a publisher very happy? So there's this reputation management situation here where educators, librarians, and book publishers will influence the publication of book content, again, pushing it towards pushing books that publish things that parents are going to want to buy. I mean, that makes perfect sense. There is, however, no centralized standard system that parents can use to flag good games. There are blogs, there are magazines that review games for certain reasons, from certain moral and ethical and political standpoints, so that parents can use that information to pick games. But so that's a little bit of the background here, in that games seem to be different from books. Movies fall into a similar category as well.